Hello, listeners. We are your hosts, Sakina and Fatima, and we welcome you to episode 4 of Two Pupils in a Pod. Today, we are here with another new series, School of Thumb.
Yes, and we hope you all appreciate the fun. So, in our previous episode, we talked about the impact of COVID-19 on the macro environment of education. And so, in this episode, we'll be discussing how the micro environment of education, consisting of individual stakeholders, has been affected by this global pandemic.
Yes, by individual stakeholders, we mean students, teachers, and parents. And I'm pretty sure that each of you will agree that this global pandemic has rocked the education sector, and its ripples were experienced by all of us in some way.
Definitely. And in fact, if we revisit some huge figures from our previous episode, it was noted that 1.725 billion learners are currently affected due to this
Wow.
pandemic. And this accounts to almost 98.6 percentage of the world student population. So
That's all of it.
that's almost all of us. And all of this only due to school closures.
Yeah, but actually, a few countries did not close down their schools in response to the pandemic, which is so odd. And a few of those countries, to begin with, are Chile and Uruguay, where the government announced that the schools would only close if there were confirmed cases of the virus among the students, which is,
What?
yeah, I mean, can you imagine? It's crazy, right?
Yeah, this is pretty shocking. So they were actually waiting for the tragedy to happen to take a step.
Yes, exactly. But that's not just been the case for these two countries. I mean, of course, for them it was this reason, but a few other countries as well, like Australia, they also didn't really close their schools in line
Hmm.
with the advice from the government.
Right. So I think a lot of private and independent schools did shut down, but that was totally up to them. They were given
Yeah,
the
I mean,
choice.
it was a matter of choice for them. And the same
Hmm.
happened in Sweden as well, where schools were open, but like the universities and high schools were kept closed.
Right. So the government did not really mandate any sort of closure on these
Yeah.
countries.
And then in Russia, they came up with like this flexible attendance policy for students for public schools, wherein like the parents and students, were given a choice of whether they
Hmm.
want to send the child to school or they want them to attend from home.
Okay, so this was like basically a choice, which is the pretty safe way to go.
Yeah, I mean, they
Now,
left it up to the parents itself to make the decision.
yeah, exactly. So now when we talk about the individual stakeholders, we often forget that teachers are also affected, and we often
Yeah,
fail to address the problems and the challenges that teachers face. So let's talk
exactly.
about that.
Yeah. So I think the foremost problem that teachers have faced has been in terms of technology. I
Yeah.
mean, teachers have been trained in teaching students in like a traditional setting. We know that majority of the schools eventually transition to online learning, so it's not been easy when you look at it from a teacher's point of view, because getting familiarized with technology and knowing how to use all of that, having those skills and all, not every teacher. And we're talking about teachers, we're talking about people who are in the late 20s, 30s, 40s. So it's definitely, to learn new things, it's not that easy for them at their age. So it's been a huge challenge for them, in terms of technology, to deliver their lessons online.
Yes, I agree to that. And since everything happened so abruptly, there wasn't much time or there wasn't sufficient training given to them. Everything had to be so quick and sudden.
Exactly. So yeah, so now since the teacher is teaching from behind a screen, I think another huge problem that they faced is low participation from students. And I mean, you can't really blame the students here either, because they have to mute themselves throughout the lecture while the teacher is teaching. But of course, in like the normal classroom, when they're all in the same room, there's definitely so much interaction, like we've mentioned in our previous episodes, and that is a motivating factor for the teacher as well, when the class is being responsive. But when
Yes.
she's just teaching for 40 minutes continuously without any response or feedback from students, it's very hard for them to teach that sort of a class. So that's also been a huge problem for them.
Yes, absolutely. And so, this led to another problem that teachers had to look upon their traditional study plans, and they had to come up with this new plan that was suitable for the online
Yeah,
interface.
yeah,
And especially in online learning, it's really difficult to conduct activities or anything of that sort. So they had to
exactly.
resort to more online resources, and they had to look up into so much innovation in terms of quizzes and games and stuff like that,
True, true.
which
I
was
mean,
yet
even if
another time consuming thing, for a teacher to manage.
yes, true. And this all, I mean, they had to do it themselves, like no training or
Yeah,
no, not much help, you can say, from like the educational authorities as such. Especially when you look at the pre-primary and primary schoolers. I mean, if you think about
yes.
their attention span and all of those things, so even like within the classroom, it's so difficult for the teacher to have their attention and keep them engaged. And so now, when she's not physically present to teach those children, to create that sort of an environment has also been a huge challenge for teachers. And for that reason, uh, some of them have gone above and beyond and use personal resources to try and make a favorable learning environment for their students. And I think it's commendable, because we've heard so many stories where
Definitely.
teachers were just neglected by the school authorities. I mean, they just had to do it on their own. They were left to do it on their own.
Yes, and so many teachers have, purchased things out of their own pocket. They've brought their own blackboards and
Right, right.
blocks and different things that they know would help their students, even if it's through a screen, which is really
Exactly.
such acts should really be appreciated.
Definitely, and that's the thing, right? I mean, they're not being appreciated, which is kind of sad, because if you look at, the selflessness of a teacher and how much they put in, they're just not receiving that sort of appreciation, or even, just the help that they should in terms of these things. So,
So true,
that
so
has
true.
led to yet another problem, that is now for teachers who are not, able to adapt to the technology and, properly deliver online lessons, or maybe they didn't have the resources and knowledge. Uh, so some of them were actually given an ultimatum by schools. So it was like, you either, figure out a way to do this, to, conduct your lessons online, or risk losing your job.
That's a terrible situation to be in because nobody would love being in a do or die situation, which is what teachers are facing
Definitely.
right now if they don't adapt to these
And I
changes.
mean, in this situation, like we said, it was so unprecedented. They were not given any sort of training, and this was not part of the job description. And in spite of that, they're trying so hard. But like I said, they've just
Yeah.
not got the support that they should have.
All of these measures that teachers are taking right now are voluntary. They're not mandated to do so, but
Exactly.
teachers do it out of their own pocket, and they're not getting appreciated for it, which is obviously such a sad thing.
Yeah. And so again, talking about teachers losing their jobs, another reason why that has happened is, remember how we spoke in our last episode about how there have been demands by students and parents to reduce the fees. So, like, due to these, shortfalls in expected revenue, schools and like other educational authorities have compensated by laying off their staff.
Yes, and this is a really difficult situation. I'm
Yeah,
so
I mean,
sorry.
just when you look at this, in this situation where teachers needed the support most, they have not received it. And so now, their jobs are online. So, as a result of all this, so many teachers have lost their jobs, or like there's a threat that they might. And it's a sad situation, really.
Yes, that's definitely such a terrible situation. And talking about teachers who have taken up the challenge of remote teaching, they then have the whole other situation of juggling their personal and professional life,
Oh,
which is
yes.
definitely not easy. They need to strike a balance. They need to come up with a proper solution and a proper schedule to differentiate and to give time to their home as well as the teaching.
Especially when you look at teachers whose kids are small. So that small kids, they can't sit for online classes alone. I mean, they need someone to sit with them. They need their parent to sit with them. So for teachers it becomes so hard because, of course, the timings are same for when their class is going on and when their child's class is going on. So basically, they have to find a way for their own child also to be able to study, and also manage their own students and classes. So that's been difficult. And I think that's not just a problem for teachers. I think it's uh, also been a problem for parents who've been working from home, to just give
Definitely.
time. I mean, whether, it's their 9 to 5 job, or they're just logging a specific number of hours in a day, giving time to the child. It's not just for like the smaller kids, but even for teenagers. They have to, check up on them, because uh, in class, I mean, the teacher can monitor whether or not the child is paying attention, but behind a screen, who knows what the child is doing, sitting with like maybe another device, or just not mentally being there. So even in that sense, parents, it's upon the parents to make sure that their child is paying attention in the lectures.
Yes, yes. That's actually a very common thing, and it happens, no doubt. You cannot um, deny that it doesn't. It actually does happen. And so, since parents are also confined to work from home, it's very difficult to manage their time because the same, just like you had mentioned, their working hours are the same as the child's school hours. So it's very difficult for parents to devote time on their children, and especially since if you have multiple children, it's very difficult to keep up with each of them.
Oh, yes, yes. And okay, multiple children and then both the parents working. I mean, that's just such a complicated situation where they have
Yeah.
to, you know, give time to their work and then to their child's education. And so it's also just the amount of overall time, that is available for the parent to devote to their children for teaching.
Yes, and talking about multiple children, it'll it's obvious to note that multiple children will use multiple devices, and a lot of households do not have that kind of luxury to be able to afford so many devices at
Yes,
once,
yes,
especially
yes,
since
yes.
timings clash. And
Exactly. I mean, it's, like you rightly said, not everyone can afford it. If again, if the parent is also working and there's more than one child, so to have those many laptops or phones available, and on top of that, having like a proper internet connection if so many people are using it at once, these
Yes,
are all additional costs they have to personally incur, in addition to the school fees, the tuition fees that they're already paying to the schools. So
yes. And
it's
so, especially due to this pandemic, a lot of families have been affected in a financial way, and this is
yeah,
adding more to that. It's definitely not helping them in any way, even though they're at home, even
exactly,
though they're
exactly.
studying from home, even though they are working from home, the expenses, the costs are still the same. And as you
Or
had
in
mentioned,
fact,
the more, yeah, exactly. So not everyone will have the best resource, or not everyone will have the fastest internet or the most amazing online resources to, have the best learning
yeah,
opportunity.
to best benefit from learning, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
But a few countries that I actually read about uh, decided to approach a very innovative method. Indonesia and Jordan both decided to broadcast their lessons on TV.
really?
So they actually appointed these certain channels, and they broadcasted their lessons on those particular channels, just so that the student could switch on his or her TV and easily learn, which is
Wow, that
quite an
is
amazing solution.
brilliant. That is amazing.
Yes, because TVs were definitely a luxury of the past, but they are a necessity today. I have yet to, come across a household that does not have a TV.
Yeah,
So,
even just, so I mean, I think that's great. you know uh this, I think, solves the very common issues of the multiple device thing. So, and
yes,
like the
yes,
internet speed. So if you just have like a TV, I'm pretty sure what they're doing is for like different classes, like they've allotted times. So for each class the lesson is broadcasted at like a particular time. So you
yeah,
don't need to have different devices and like Wi-Fi and all. You just sit in front of the TV when it's time for your class. And wow, that's a pretty amazing idea. I really like that. And
exactly.
not just for the students. Even if you look at some parents who haven't like completed their education or haven't received proper formal education, even for them it's such a great opportunity to learn.
Yes, that's actually a very interesting way to look at this. Parents can simultaneously learn some things.
Especially people from the lower economic backgrounds. The parents themselves have not received uh, proper education. So while their child is learning, they can sit along and learn. And I think that's just a very, very uh, brilliant idea that these two countries have come up with. But
Yes,
again,
yes,
talking
absolutely.
about parents not having having received that sort of education or just having that kind of knowledge, I think that gives rise to another problem, and that is homeschooling. It requires the parent to, like, whether it's just making sure whether the child is learning or revising with them. It requires the parent to have that kind of knowledge, and they themselves need to understand those topics and concepts first. And for parents who don't,
Exactly.
uh,
And yeah, definitely parents who don't have prior knowledge about, say, math or how to solve this sum, it gets really difficult to,
yeah,
do it
exactly.
explain it to their child. So,
So that just, it's again, it's leading to like a situation where some children whose parents are probably maybe like to illuminate their history lessons, taking them to trips to monuments or museums, and things like that, they're definitely going to benefit. But like if you look at the other side where parents don't know anything about the topic or the subject, there's no way they can help their child, so those children will definitely be hugely affected. So that's going to lead to a lot of inequality in terms of how much the child is benefiting.
Yes, absolutely. So, an inherent problem with homeschooling is also the fact that s- children are never going to take their parents seriously. I mean, teachers play a different role, and teachers are in their own place, and parents are in their place. So, when parents act like teachers, or when parents are trying to teach certain concepts, little children especially, or they tend to have fun, and they tend to take everything lightly, and they
Yeah,
don't necessarily learn, which is sort of
exactly.
a problem.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? With parents, that's like the reason schools are there, so that the child is in an environment where they can study, and there's a person who can like control the children, that is the teacher, the
Yeah.
educator, who is especially trained to teach and to deal with children. Parents, they simply cannot, because like you rightly said, with parents there is no seriousness, the children have no seriousness with their own parents. So now that's what has happened, right? That because of online learning, now again kids are back at home, and the responsibility now lies on their parents to ensure that their child has learned everything.
Exactly. And talking about all of these problems, Singapore has actually come up with a very feasible solution. So they have decided to keep their schools open, but only for those parents who cannot find alternative accommodation or alternative solutions for their children. And all of these
Oh,
problems compiled on top of each other, I think
right.
Singapore has taken a very good step.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, whether the accommodation is in terms of times or resources, I think
Yes,
it's great. It definitely reduces the burden on parents, especially in this crazy situation, this crazy time period that we all are in right now.
yes, I agree to that.
Okay, so talking about working parents, uh, frontline workers, basically the people who are contributing to this anti-coronavirus effort, and who are, uh, just the healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and so many other people. So for the
Yes,
children of such parents, for them, the United Kingdom and Finland, these two countries have made arrangements for these children, and so basically they've kept schools open where these children can come and spend their time, and teachers are coming to the school, to these schools, and spending time with the children. So these parents basically are working at the front line. They don't have to worry about uh, how their child's education is going to be affected, or if they're just going to be left alone at home. So I think
that's
that's like,
actually a pretty novel idea, because especially since these children are the most at risk because of their parents,
yeah,
and
true,
so
true.
if they are in a safer environment, it'll really benefit them as well.
Hmm.
And wow, these efforts
So,
are actually pretty commendable.
yeah, and in fact, in Finland, even for children with special needs, the early childhood and education care is being provided for these children, and to the parents who are unable to arrange that kind of care at home. So yeah, when you think about what Finland has done, I think it's great, in terms of children with special needs, because we know that in most places these children, or students with disabilities, with learning disabilities, they go to special schools, right? So they too have been closed down in this
Yes.
situation, so it's been a very hard time for them and their families. Go.
So now, talking about the heart of the education system, as students, we have our own set of problems. We spoke about the plight of international students, how they were stuck in foreign countries, and their classes,
Yes,
and the issue about their fees, and uncertainty about their further education prospects, because travel
yes, yes.
and everything was in order due to this pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, Unavailability of scholarships,
Oh,
uncertainty
yes.
regarding exams, cancellation of exams, all of this, um, which we've already addressed in detail in our previous episodes. So make sure
Yes.
to do those. And
Talking about examinations, from a student's point of view, I think, I really think it was unfair for those of them who did not get to, give their examinations and were instead awarded grades or like were passed on, I don't know, whatever criteria. Don't you think it was unfair for them? I mean, to not be able to write their examination and be given grades on the basis of various criteria.
absolutely, I feel the same, especially because, students were not informed of the grading criteria. We didn't know what we were getting
Yeah,
judged.
exactly. I mean,
A
in
lot of
some
students,
cases, there was no transparency in a few
yes,
cases, and then it was just very chaotic. I mean, it was, a new area even for schools and universities to deal with, but I think that because of this, a lot of students have been at a huge disadvantage. And in fact, I've read in a couple of places that because of this, the students who are like, from the lower socioeconomic area, they have been at a bigger disadvantage than, their counterpart of private school going children. And that's just so unfair, so uh,
so much disparity. It's really,
yeah,
um,
exactly. I mean, I think
okay.
another major complaint that we've heard from students is that they're stuck with schoolwork all day.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. It's like teachers have this misconception that since students are at home, since they have nothing else to do, it's fine, let's give them some more homework. And it gets very
I
difficult for a student to keep up with all the subjects at
Yeah,
once.
I mean, it all just keeps, piling up, adding up assignments and preparing for tests. It's just, that's what they're doing all day long. And it's led to frustration among so many students. Even on weekends, they're preparing for examinations and all, and, just different things. So basically, it's like they used to have like some sort of free time, when they used to go to school. But now that they're home, it's just twice the amount of work that they're
Yes,
doing.
yes, yes, definitely. A lot of students have been complaining about that, and it's valid, to be very honest.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think at the beginning, when this online classes thing came up, a lot of students thought that, okay, it's going to be super chill, and we'll just have to attend the classes and then we'll be done for the day and all that. But now seeing the amount of work that they're being given, I think it's completely changed their earlier notion
Yes.
about what online learning would be like.
Yeah, most of them can't wait to go back to school now.
I know, I can't wait to go back.
Same,
Okay,
same. Well,
so
in general, it has affected our learning journey. It has interrupted a normal student's way of learning, and this has
yeah,
increased
definitely.
dropouts. This has led to gap years, and generally, students have had a lot of difficulty adapting to the new learning methods because sitting behind a
Yeah,
screen for straight 6 to 7 hours is not very easy.
exactly. And it's so boring. I mean, if you look at it, just sitting in front of a screen, hearing the teacher talk, or like watching a presentation or something, because for students there has to be some sort of interaction or engagement to for them to be interested in what's being taught. So
Yeah.
they haven't necessarily been affected by like the technology in the way teachers have, but definitely this technology is affecting their retention, because now their attention span is decreasing, their concentration is decreasing, there's no motivation to study, they're just sitting in front of a screen, and like we don't even know if half of them are paying attention. So that's definitely going to affect how much they retain, how much of what's being taught is being retained.
Yes, yes, exactly. Students have so many distractions, and it's so much easier to just mute your mic, shut your camera, and do other things, and the teacher won't even realize what's going on behind the screen.
Yeah,
So
I mean, there's so
it definitely,
little that the teacher can do in this situation. So
yeah,
I think students have taken an advantage of this, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's affecting their education.
definitely. And um, talking about students, when we think about younger pupils in pre-primary or kindergarten, for them, going to school, um, collaborating with students, engaging in activities, all of these things contribute to their social life and contribute to how they learn and how they interact
Yes,
with
yes,
people. And
definitely.
all of this exposure helps them in a certain way that this pandemic has now hindered.
True, true. I absolutely agree. I mean, that's one of the reasons schools came into being, right? Is that there's
Yeah,
this environment of learning, and it's not just textbook learning, it's just all of these other things, awareness and skills, different sort of skills, whether it's social skills and just those things that you can only have in a classroom environment, in a school environment, when you interact with others. So now for
yes,
those, like you said, for those younger students who are just beginning their education, they're starting off only with absolute lack of interaction. So it's definitely going to affect their overall, I think, personality and growth, and how everything then on, because these are like the foundation years, and these skills are super important going ahead in life. And since they're not uh, getting any of that, it's going to be a huge problem for them going ahead. I mean, so many studies have shown that, even like a short period of missed school time will have prominent consequences on, the skill growth and like development of the child.
since we are talking about the different types of students, uh, we also need to address the disparity of um, private school going children and public school going children. Basically,
Oh,
the
yes,
concern
yes.
of classism. Now, this
Yes,
pandemic
absolutely.
has brought about so many inequalities that were inherent in the education systems, but are only
They've just
evident right
become more
now because of this
prominent now.
situation.
They've just been aggravated to such an extent
Yes,
that it's so obvious for everyone to see how, at one end, you know, there are students who are just struggling.
definitely. I agree to that. And low and lower middle income countries, it's especially, and students from a lower economic background, the linguistic minorities, uh, all of these families, all of these students have been affected in such a way that uh, their learning process is definitely not the same as
Of
their
course, I mean, they're
counterparts.
already at a disadvantage because of their
Yeah,
circumstances, and now this has just made it so many times worse. So it's really unfortunate, for these students, and they have not been supported. Schools have just sort of uh, made like one single provision for everyone, and that is online learning. But these students, these people have really, really been affected in this
Yeah, I
situation.
mean, when you think about it, these students are already in such a vulnerable situation. Their condition is already so fragile, and because of the pandemic, it has aggravated so many problems. And this added problem, because a lot of students relied on school for being a safe place that they can go to, for being a place where they were provided meals at times,
Oh,
and
yes,
for
yes. A
being
lot
a
of
place,
schools have meals, midday meals, and that's
yeah,
actually an incentive for so many students to come to school, that they're just getting a meal. And so it's really, this whole thing has been really sad.
yes, definitely. Like, along with the missed opportunities for learning, they no longer have access to healthy meals, which the school provided.
So yeah, but since you talked about the access to meals, um, two countries, Lesotho and Uruguay, they closed down their schools, but they allowed school meals to continue. So they were still providing meals to the students, just without, the classes continuing. And it's commendable. More countries, should have done this, because in this period
Yes,
of where so many families are, going through a financial crisis, especially from the lower economic strata, they're already struggling on a daily basis, and now it's just the situation is gone from worst to worst from them. This has come as a savior, even, just if it's for the students. So I think it's an
this is
amazing thing that these
amazing.
countries have done. Exactly.
Yes, 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 absolutely. I mean, how thoughtful of them, to be very honest. Because
Exactly.
as you had mentioned, that a lot of schools do not really think about these particular students. And Lesotho and Uruguay have done such
Yeah,
a great job of deciding to
phenomenal.
do this. And
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it has helped so many families cope up with the whole
definitely,
in
definitely.
general.
So I think, in spite of all these problems, there is hope somewhere. I mean, it's less right now, but it's there, and I think right now that's enough, because we've seen and addressed so many problems over these last few episodes. Everyone has been so gravely affected by this, and these were very general problems. I'm sure at an individual level, each one of us has like a different story. And but these such stories, such examples, are so inspiring and encouraging to hear about.
Yes, especially since these particular countries were able to come up with such great solutions, such innovative ways to tackle this challenge. And it's been
Right.
really commendable. And a lot of countries should take up on their examples, and they should,
Yeah,
um,
I mean, if
follow
they
their
can do it,
footsteps.
I'm sure that the other countries too can find some way. I mean, of course it's not easy. There are a lot of factors in play, but if they can try to come up with a way to help students and teachers as well, because as you know,
Yes, absolutely.
teachers are like a crucial part of society, but so are students. They're the future of the country, so they really have to be supported, and their problems have to be heard. And like we said,
Yes,
these were very general problems. There's so many more issues that teachers, students, parents are facing, and it's as upsetting it has
yeah,
been hearing about those
definitely.
issues. These countries, in their small efforts that they're making, it has really, really been very encouraging what they've been doing. So that's actually what we'll be focusing on in our next episode. Basically, all of these innovative solutions and encouraging, inspiring stories and examples that we came across during the course of our research, which we would love to share with all of you.
Yes, now that we have talked at length about what challenges the education empire has faced as a whole, it's safe to say that we have seen some very innovative solutions, and we definitely want to address them and bring light to these underrated efforts so that these can be taken as
Yes.
solutions by the global community and we can all implement them. So stay tuned for our next episode for sure.
And as always, thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to us. Thank you so much for listening.
You can reach out to us on our email, and our website is always available. We really appreciate your comments and keep supporting us. See you all next time.